Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of Black Minds Matter. I'm so happy to be joined with our 2020 Future Leaders Fellows of the American Federation for Children, Giselle and her friend Sharon. And so thanks so much for joining. And of course, the veteran himself, Walter Blanks Jr. Today we're going to be talking about how the media and how organizations like the NEA and the Teachers Union try to manipulate students' minds, especially those who've benefited from school choice. And so we are all beneficiaries of education freedom. And so we thought that this would be a great conversation to have on the Black Minds Matter channel. And so I'm going to turn it over to Giselle because this is her brainchild. And as the fellow at the American Federation for Children, beneficiaries across the country of school choice options come together for a year-long fellowship to learn about policy, to do a deep dive in communications training, and they delve deep into the politics around education, which there shouldn't be any politics, but unfortunately there is. And so all of these fellows are girded up with the tools they need to go out into the world and become successful activists and advocates for education freedom. And so this topic was Giselle's baby. And so Giselle, yeah, tell us a little bit about this topic and what brought you to it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having us today. I'm super glad to be able to be here and share a discussion about this really important topic. I really came up with this question based on my experience with the fellowship. So once I dove into what school choice was, beyond just Wisconsin and my high school, I realized that a lot of people would invalidate my opinion. So I became curious to why is it that people don't kind of like they brush me off like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I realized that this was something that was happening at a larger scale across the country, where there is certain belief that because you receive private education and you support school choice, you're in some way being brainwashed. So personally, I think that the idea that a student of color can be manipulated by an entity to adopt certain beliefs is an insult to our intelligence. And in my experience, it's simply not true. Thanks to the quality of education that I've received from my high school, Cristo Jesuit High School, today I am a well-rounded and competent individual. I'm instinctively curious and thoughtful and highly engaged in my community. I'm politically opinionated and receptive to different perspectives and beliefs. I think that my education has nurtured my interests, and it really has exposed me to different ideas that contribute to my personal character development. But it's never limited me to believe certain things or follow certain ideas. There's only one Giselle, and if there were a mold that just is creating students to be these individuals with certain ideas, certain political stances, interests, there would be no diversity. So that's kind of where my stance is for this topic.
Yeah, and it's I've been a beneficiary of school. I got a scholarship from 6th to 12th grade, and I remember being in high school and listening to comments like that. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, listen to us. We are the adults, and we've been working in this policy space, and we know that these policies are really meant for your bad, and it's like, how are you telling me like I am successful in the program that I'm in, and how is it some sort of like under you know undermining a secret initiative for my demise and for my community's demise. But Sharon, I'd love to have you jump in. Please give us a little bit about your background and your education journey.
Hello, so my name is Sharon. I am currently a sophomore at Marquette University. I am studying and majoring in corporate communications with the plan to work in corporate upon graduation. Um, for my middle school, I attended Alexander Mitchell Integrated Art School. And for high school, just as Giselle did, I attended Cristo Jesuit High School. Um, So I have this experience with attending a public middle school, but attending a private high school. And just as Giselle had mentioned, the idea that people of color are brainwashed upon attending private education or private schools, I believe this to be completely false. In my personal opinion, in my high school, there were students of diverse backgrounds, diverse beliefs. The students had different beliefs and perspectives upon everything like religion, politics, and never once did we ever felt as if our school was pushing us to change our beliefs or manipulating us in any way. On the contrary, I felt as if our beliefs were being respected and sometimes even embraced.
Hmm. Yeah. And Walter, let's bring you in. Walter was
Yeah.
also a Future Leaders Fellow, 2019, but he's totally like surpassed pretty much every fellow ever. And so I don't think you have like raised the bar. All the fellows to come have like humongous shoes to fill. But Walter has definitely, just like me, we beneficiaries, and all of us. I can't even really single. Normally, it's Walter and I on calls and stuff, and we're like opposed to everybody else on the call. We are beneficiaries of the program, but actually, I can't even say that because it's like we're all beneficiaries of choice. But he's definitely created a name for himself in this space, from being a beneficiary to now being a known advocate within the education reform space. And so, Walter, happy to have you on the Black Minds Matter channel, network, whatever. But yeah, I'll let you
Uh,
introduce yourself and say some words.
yeah, well, it's this topic is very, very interesting because when we talk about education, whether it's public, private, just whatever, just education in general, the the things that happen within the schools are often missed in the conversation, right? And the focus is the educational development of the student. But then there are also a lot of other issues and factors that come into that, right? Social constructs, and sometimes even political constructs as you get older and understand politics a little bit more. And so I've been in many rooms where, some people will say, well, the public school are, indoctrination camps, and the same with private schools, and all of these different things. But when you look at it, especially in middle school and high school, I think it's pivotal for students to be in an environment with diversity of thought, right? The least amount of people that you have in the school that live your perspective and see the life from your lens, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. And when I look at my own journey, growing up, a lot of the kids, a lot of the students came from my neighborhood, right? And we all lived similar lifestyles, had similar life experiences. And so when I attended private school, it was completely different. Of course, my private school was predominantly white, but even in that, I was exposed to so much more outside of what I knew, of what I could achieve, all of these different things. And so I think the more exposure that we give to our students and the more diversity we give them, is something that's super super important, and being in an environment where they can learn about things that maybe mom and dad didn't teach them, or things that they haven't experienced or lived themselves, is super super important. Like, I don't really come from, well, I don't at all come from a political family with any political experience, expertise. And now, right, like, look at me, like, I'm scheming to lead the entire country, right? And so that's from my education and the place that I'm in now, where I've been able to engage with people who don't think the way I do, don't have the same perspectives that I do. And I think, I mean, even in my own life as a leader, as someone who, like you said, Denisha, has kind of began to pave the way for the next generation, diversity of thought is so, so important. And I think private school does that fairly well, being able to, especially with school choice, especially with education freedom, right? You're starting to see now where kids who are disadvantaged for whatever reason are, rubbing shoulders with, in my case, people who were very successful, very wealthy. There was a guy that I talked to, a mentor of mine out in Texas, and he said he only enrolled his kids into private school for the networking opportunities, right? Like, from a young age. And I thought that was like super super interesting. But to be able to build those relationships and build those perspectives, outside of school and into your adult life is super super important.
Yeah, and I can
Yeah, and that
attest to
brings me
that.
to my next points, because you guys were saying, well, and Walter, you just said, this whole, somebody has made a definition for school choice, but the experience that we've had under the auspice of school choice is completely different. So how about, like, each of you, can you go around more, like, what does school choice mean to you versus what the popular opinion in your own circles say that school choice is for you?
Yeah. I can go ahead and bounce out of one of the points that Walter did and then answer your question. I think that part of the reason why I'm as successful as I am today is because of the education I received in Cristo Rey. I can confidently say that I probably wouldn't have accomplished half the things I have without having that space of opportunity, because it's not only like you can have a lot of potential, but if you're not exposed to opportunity, then you won't be able to accomplish. And I feel like that's what Cristo Rey was for me. And so school choice means a lot. But Walter had mentioned networking. I can't I can't explain how many people I've met across my high school career, job opportunities where I just mention where I graduated school, and automatically some people look at me differently and they're like, "Oh, really? You graduated from Cristo Rey? Do you know, like, are you familiar with this concept? Are you?" And it's just a conversation that opens up, and that's very unique to me, because it's almost like you belong, well, at least in Cristo Rey, it's almost like you belong to a greater community, because it is a network of 36 schools all over the country. So imagine, as a 14-year-old, you walk into a high school and you're not only saying yes to, like, okay, algebra classes and English classes and gym, whatever, but you're also saying yes to a community, a network, people that you're going to come across in life, and they're going to be like, I know that school. I know people that have graduated from that school. And automatically, you have people that just understand you a little bit more as an individual. So school choice is very important to me. I support it and champion for school choice, because I believe that it is an opportunity that people should have available to them. They should be able to choose if that's what they want, and they should be able to embrace that opportunity.
Adding on to what Giselle had said, to me, choice is exactly that, an opportunity. Choice is an opportunity that allows students to attain private, high quality education that they normally wouldn't be able to. I attended, like I said, a public middle school, and because of choice, I had the opportunity to attend a private high school. Similarly to what Giselle had said, my experiences as a Cristo graduate have been great because of the connections and the networking. Um, when applying for internships and applying anywhere, people see that I graduated from Cristo and they already know what kind of a success it is. People know of Cristo because of all the networking they do across, for example, Milwaukee. And the name matters. The name of the school that you attended matters. People have perceptions upon the school that you attended. And for Cristo Rey, their name is of good and reputable reputation. But yeah, overall, to me, choice is an opportunity for students who need it and to achieve higher quality education.
I think it's super important also, and both you ladies are making excellent connections. With this, it's not just about the education that a child gets, which is super important, but then they're able to take that and make something of themselves in the future, right? When they become adults, whether they want to be a doctor or a lawyer or someone crazy like me who wants to become president, right? It's like, I often say that school choice helped me to realize my dreams while also equipping me to go and make those dreams happen, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of nation would we be if we just tell children you could be whatever you want to be, and then that's it, and we don't give them the tools and the resources that they need to actually go out and do it. And so for me, school choice is, it's all of that, right? It's opportunity, it's access, it's experiences. But I think the biggest part, and once again, it's often left out by the teachers unions, by some politicians. It's like, no, we are giving these children a shot at a better life, regardless of where they came from, who their parents were, how much money their parents made. I'm fully convinced that school choice has the ability to break the cycle of poverty within a family, within one generation, right? One kid who gets out, right, gets out of that school, goes to a better school, graduates high school, graduates college. You know, you're already, I mean, you're not guaranteed success, but you definitely have a higher chance of success, whatever success means to you. And so, like me personally, I have massive dreams, massive goals. You know, they often say that if your dreams aren't scaring you or keeping you up at night, they're not big enough. And so that's how I dream. But not only that, I'm working to get there, and I have the tools, I have the access, I have the resources, whether it's things I learned in school or people that I've met, you know, along the way. And Denisha, we talk about this all the time, right? Heavy hitters in our movement, people like Darrell Bradford, Chris Stewart, you know, Howard Fuller, like these legends who've paved the way for us to do that work, have inspired us. And so, you know, I can get on the phone right now and text Darrell and be like, hey, I'm working on X, Y, and Z. Can you give me your perspective? Can you help me? And so I think that's super important. Moving forward, we have to realize that we're not just fighting for kids to have a better education. We're fighting for them to have a better future and a better life.
Yeah. And, you know, I think about, you know, we call out all the time the teachers unions and all of their affiliate organizations because they really give millions, billions of dollars to all of these subsidiaries, and they're all connected back to the teachers union. So that's like an aside. They're so frustrating. But when I think about organizations that are supposed to have, this is like my matter, supposed to have our back, the NAACP and all these national organizations, even some of the fraternities and sororities, sorry, but they say that they support education excellence for young Black kids, for minority kids, but the policy doesn't line up with the changes that actually need to need to be made in society in order for us to all get a better education. And although this is Black Minds Matter, the education achievement rates and the dropout rates, they disproportionately affect the two ethnic groups that you see on today's conference, Black and Hispanic. And it's frustrating, and it's time out for all of these stats to not be in our favor. I mean, I get so frustrated looking at stats and data, and I'm like, can we be at the top? And in education choice, in school choice, like, we're constantly at the top. And so that's why I do this work. But with the organizations that say they support us, and what would you guys, say to them? Because we are the proof in the pudding, we are evidence that this stuff that they fight against works.
I want to jump in here first, if that's okay, because this is something that like you said, Tanisha, is very, very frustrating. And even on the Black Minds Matter site, you show some of the research and some of the data and some of the numbers. And there was one in particular that showed the achievement gap, right? Like eighth, and there was a study last year that you posted that showed eighth graders, less than 20% of eighth graders are proficient or above in math, reading, and civics. And when I say less than 20%, that's being gracious. The numbers, I think in civics were 9% were proficient, 13% in, I think, reading, and then 15% in math, or something like that. And so it's just like, people
and this
will
is
say,
out of our billions of students nationwide.
Right. And so when people say, who oppose school choice, they say, oh, well, public education is the bedrock of our democracy. And I'm like, really? Like, look at these numbers. Like, that is horrendous. Like, no matter who you are, there's no way you can look at these numbers for these minority people and say, oh yeah, public education is the best way to go. Just because you can, pay the money to send your kid to a high performing school or move into a more expensive house to get them into the school doesn't mean that all public schools are like that across the country. And so it's just, it's super, super frustrating. And to answer your question directly, Denisha, these leaders have to step up, right? Period, point blank, right? Like it's come to a point where we have to stop playing nice. We have to stop trying to be on everyone's good side. It's like, the longer we do that, the more kids are just shuffled along. And so if you're going to stand up and say you support Black people, or you support Black lives, or you support, all of these different things, and yeah, right now I'm talking to politicians, people in the political movement, or just everybody at this point. If you say that that's what you support, then you have to support school choice. You have to support education, because how else are we supposed to do anything, right? Without the knowledge and the application of that knowledge to go further. So you can't be like, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter or Black Minds Matter, but then when you're, on the Senate floor or at a hearing, standing up there talking about how school choice doesn't work, or school choice is a terrible policy for the country. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, are you not paying attention? Do you not see the hundreds of thousands of students across the country who've benefited from these policies that you say don't work? And it's just like, I mean, half the time, personally, I don't think that these people believe what they're saying anyway, right? But when it comes to power and money and resources, right, like that talks louder, and that speaks volumes to the people that are in positions of power. So that's why I'm fighting so hard in the movement now. That's why
we need you to be president.
Right. And like all of these things, right? Public office in any form, we need more people that look like us, that have similar experiences in those rooms at the table to have those discussions. And until that happens, right? Like, I don't care what you say, like, unless there is change, unless there is policy, unless there's legislation, your words are empty to me. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
I love it. So let me ask you guys, who are the people telling you, if you can pinpoint like what category of people this is, like, because I've heard it, who's saying you guys don't know what you're talking about, or you're brainwashed by opportunity, what you actually don't know what you're talking about, let me educate you. Are these the politicians? Are this family member? Are these teachers? Like, who are these people?
I have a really good example of this. Was actually like the moment that my first encounter, you could say, with this concept. I've always been very involved in my community because I come from a family of mixed backgrounds of immigration status. So Milwaukee has a pretty significant population of immigrants. So I've always done a lot of immigrant like community service in that immigrant community. So one day I was in a team meeting for this organization, and we were talking about education. The conversation came up. They used me as an example as a very thoughtful leader, very dedicated, they described me in such a beautiful way. And I felt really proud of all the work that I had done for that organization, because I felt very satisfied with the way that they were describing me to the rest of the people on the table. And then the conversation took a shift. Like, I knew they weren't talking about me personally, but then they were like, and that's why, we need to support public schools, and because private schools are brainwashing our kids. And I was like, what? I went to a private school. I graduated from a private school. Like, how are you going to say that after you just described me as such a, I don't know, just like unique individual that has her own thoughts and, fights for what she believes and is fierce. And then you're going to say that I've been brainwashed. It's like, so it was people within my community that was like, oh yeah, you're amazing, but only when we're talking about this topic. If we don't agree with everything else, then what am I? Then now how would you describe me? So that was kind of like, I didn't know how to react in that moment, besides like, I graduated from the school. And then they were like, oh, well, now we don't know what to say, right? Because now your point doesn't make sense. So it was very disappointing. And it was hard to sit in those rooms after that, because I kind of didn't know how to navigate that environment anymore. It was a place where I felt very safe and respected, but then I knew that because I supported school choice and I had come from a private school, I didn't know how to interact there anymore. And mind you, I was probably like 15, 16 years old at the time. So I definitely was just aware of, like, not unaware of the politics that all of these things, these topics have behind it. I was just doing community service, whatever, but, in those meetings, in those tables, in those communities, sadly, it all comes down to the politics. So that was my first encounter pretty much with this experience, and it was within my own community. So it was very disappointing. It was very heartbreaking for me. And yeah.
Sharon, what about you? Who did you hear this notion from?
The people that I heard this notion from was a lot from adults in my community. I personally feel as if they believe that because I am a person of color who attended private schools, they see that as sort of a betrayal, because the notion is that people of color should be attending the public schools because the majority attends public schools. When in reality, if you look at the statistics, the percentage of people who are actually proficient is scary. So these biases need to be set aside and to look at actual statistics and see that the students, the people of color who are attending private schools, is actually way better. But yeah, it was from people in my own community who looked at it as kind of a betrayal and side-eyed it as well.
That's such an interesting thing too, because it's always the ones that are closest to you that cut you the deepest, right? And I've experienced that, whether it was changing schools or being at the White House, all of these different things. And at the end of the day, right, you got to stick to your own experience, and all that other stuff just goes out the window, right? Like, so I'm a huge fan of the show Ballers on HBO with The Rock in it. And I was watching an episode the other day, and he says, at the end of the day, all you have is yourself and the things that you choose to care about. Everything else is someone else's problem. And in that moment, I was up, like I was snapping, and I was like, oh man, like that's so good. And especially in this movement, because it is so hostile, right? Like you said, like people were like, oh, you think you're too good, for the neighborhood school, or, all this stuff. I'm just like, I'm just trying to get a better education, right? Are you going to help me, find a high paying job? Are you going to help me graduate college? Are you going to help me, make something of myself? And then it's like, obviously the answer is no. So it's like, then why are you so worried about me and what I want and what I'm trying to achieve? And sometimes, just to be perfectly honest, you got to cut some people out. And I learned that very quickly in this space, because it's interesting, because there are a lot of, I'm trying to find the right words to describe it. I mean, I guess you could say, liberal education reformers, right? Like people who are very, liberal and all these different things. So then when, they see me talking to someone who is on the other side of the aisle, I'm the bad guy, or I'm the one that's going to get his black card taken away because he's doing all this stuff. And I'm just like, the goal is to get children into better education environments. That's it. So anyone who wants to be on board with that, regardless of what you look like, where you come from, let's hop on board and get this train moving. But then it's like, if you don't want to be on board, then get ready to get steamrolled, because I'm not stopping, my team's not stopping, and we're going to keep fighting for these kids. And so you definitely learn to develop thick skin. I think former Secretary DeVos was a really good example of thick skin and sticking to her mission. And it's just, you got to find that why and stick to it, and you have to be able to block out the noise. And especially when you do it at a level that Denisha and I do it, you quickly understand a lot of the people who oppose, a lot of the people who hate, don't even fully understand what we're fighting for, right? And it's just like, I'm not even going to have a conversation with you because you don't even understand where I'm coming from. You don't even understand the impact that this has. You just are, regurgitating things that you've heard from other people, which most of the time isn't even accurate, right? And so I spend a lot of time just battling, that, when I could be spending, time doing something to actually help put kids in a better environment. So you just got to, like Taylor Swift said, you just got to shake it off,
And it's well, I shouldn't say it's funny, but it is quite comical. It's like we're watching a satire movie, like, oh no, I don't support it, and then you go out and you're like, but we're the same, and I definitely can agree that most of this concept of you don't know what you're talking about, education choice, is detrimental to my community, to Black students, to Hispanic students, to all of students, are the people within my community, my family members, my friends. It's 9 times out of 10 them who are saying that somehow I've swallowed this pill of deception. And one day I'm going to have the wool, from my eyes, and I'm going to see, the truth. It's funny, but it really is the truth. And so it's interesting hearing that we all have had the same experience, that most of this is coming from our own community, and from people that we interact with who, like Walter said, 9 times out of 10 know the struggles that they have had. And if not them themselves, their family, their friends, someone in their community, just because of the pigmentation of our skin, has had an experience in the education system that was not positive, and who probably could have benefited from school choice. And so it's pretty funny, quite comical. So let's just answer it right out. Giselle, were you deceived? Were you brainwashed into believing that school choice, in school choice? Are you brainwashed? Let's just ask it, right?
I think that whoever genuinely believes that they can sit down and brainwash Giselle Vera is gonna have to be very, very persuasive. To me, it's bizarre. It's absurd. It's a very disappointing generalization. I am not brainwashed. I am brave because I stand by what I believe and what I know is right, which is giving the opportunity to students to have access to higher education, regardless of where they live, their zip code, the color of their skin. And I'm not afraid to walk into a room and stand by that. So I guess if that's what they want to call it, then that's their choice. But it is not brainwashing.
Sharon, are you brainwashed by opportunity?
Absolutely not. This idea of brainwashing to me sounds pretty ridiculous. You can't be brainwashed when you stand your ground and stand with your beliefs. If you know who you are, you know what you believe. Brainwashing isn't necessarily something that just happens like that. So absolutely not.
Walter, you've been doing this for some time now, sir. Are you brainwashed?
Well, I mean, I don't know if a person who's brainwashed could be able to acknowledge if they're brainwashed, but I don't know.
Very
But
you
I mean,
know
if you're going to say that for one person, right, then it has to be true for everyone. Like every single high performing private school across the country just brainwashes everybody, right? Like that has to be the mantra, which is yeah, absolutely ridiculous. But then it's like, okay, well, are you saying that because of where I come from, what the color of my skin is, or like understanding what's the is it a microaggression, right? I don't know. Like there are times now where people tell me how well I speak or how eloquent I am when I give speeches, and I'm just like, sometimes they mean well, right? But then it's like, it's also like, you almost sound shocked that I can speak that well. Like, you see what I'm saying? And it's just like, what's the motive? What's the motive behind it, right?
Yeah.
Because when when our to be honest, when our white counterparts are succeeding, doing very great things, whether it's in the community, whether it's for themselves, and you find out that they go to private school, right? Who thinks, oh, they were brainwashed when they were in that private school, right? It's like, that's ridiculous, right? You go to a better performing school, you live a better life, and then for people like us, you go back to that community and lift up other people, right? Like, that doesn't sound brainwashed to me, but maybe the people who are saying that are brainwashed. Maybe that's it. I think I got it figured out.
Right. And for me, it's like, okay, let's say I am brainwashed. I graduated from high school, the first in my family to do so. I graduated from college. I earned a master's degree. I'm brainwashed. My siblings are now receiving a great education that they wouldn't have received because pretty much everyone in my family dropped out of the same high school. So sure,
Wow.
they're brainwashed too. And like you said, Walter, the family tree of all of us is drastically changed. We're now creating a legacy of education freedom in our family. Our income brackets are going to be 10 times higher, and I'm proclaiming it, than our
Yes,
parents,
yes. Preach
and
on it.
our kids, our kids are gonna do the same. Their incomes, their education attainment levels, and that is our family tree now. So sure, I'm brainwashed. And so hey, we're all in the same boat. We're sipping on the Kool-Aid. But I like to believe that our outcomes are far better than our peers in all of those data and statistics that we see in studies saying that people who look like us are graduating at lower rates than their white peers. And that's just sad. So I've just had such a pleasure talking with you guys on this episode of Black Minds Matter. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, big thanks to Giselle for coming up with this topic. Because we all hear it all the time. Sharon, thanks for joining us, and I hope that we're in Wisconsin very soon so we can all do some dives together. And Walter, the main man, thanks so much for joining. And this is Black Minds Matter. Thank you guys so much.